So what's going on, everybody? So as you can see by today's topic, and it's been a while since I actually done a video. Been taking a break. I'm still on a break, but this video, is going to be for my political woke channel, which is Cheddar Terry 931 on YouTube. And today's topic for this, is communication. And to me, communication, is very, very important. And to me, communication in today's world is dead. There's no communication there, and because of that, there's a lot of problems, and there's a lot of things that do occur. Me, by doing this, talking to a camera, and people who may see this afterwards or even during the live stream, is communication. It's communicating, and communication is really important. And I'm actually going to get to examples of communication and where I believe it went wrong, and how we used to communicate, when I was growing up. But before I begin into all that, I just want to inform and aware people, hey, my new project, my new album is out, Red Rain. It is a dual CD, double disc, so you got disc 1 right there, that is side A. Side B is also disc 2. You guys can go get your free copy over at High Fashion Clothing over on James Campbell Boulevard, unit slot 111, next door to the dollar store, and also next door to H&R Block, right behind Galaxy Lanes. Along with that, you guys can actually pick up other CDs from me that's over there in a box. I call it the Dual Pack, and it is a pack of CDs that's together with other CDs that have dropped in October throughout the month of November, so you guys can actually get for free along with this one. If you guys so happen to be in the Square area in Columbia, Tennessee, go stop by over by Variety Record Shop, 24 Public Square in Columbia, Tennessee, and you guys can actually purchase this copy of this CD over at Variety Record Shop along with other projects that I have done for $5 plus tax. So make sure you guys go and support and get my new project, Red Rain. So I just have to throw that out there. So, communication. Communication. One way we used to, communicate in the past was by visiting somebody. And what I mean by visiting, this is, the time before automobiles, where people would just be on horses, and people will send messengers from one kingdom to another, or one village to the next, or even travel to go see a person that will take, maybe a month to get there, at the most. During around the time they created the telegraph, what's saying telegraphic signals like SOS, to get through another part of another telegraph, and it will travel through a wire that will vibrate the sounds, and you have to have people that know how to decode all that. And that used to be really, a way of communication. Also, if you were just in town, even during the time of the horse and buggy era, and, the telegraph era, let me put something in the back of this. Yeah, it's raining. I'm just going to have to take that gamble. Hopefully it won't fall. It is raining outside, so and it is cold. It is the winter time. However, again, if you were in town, sometimes, you would really walk or take a taxi carriage, right? And sometimes you even take by steamboat, even a train, to travel to go see somebody, to communicate with them, to deliver messages, and even do business. Even going a bit further, in the 80s, they had, there was emailing in the 80s, but emailing was not available to the public till the 90s. And yes, the internet and the computer was invented, really around the 60s and the 70s, but it wasn't available to the public because it was mainly used for government use at the time. However, people would really send letters during those eras. The public, send letters to talk to somebody, or call them, and you would have to look somebody up even through a phone book as communication. During all that, you want to reach out to a friend or a family member, you really haven't seen in such a very long time. And you want to know, how that person's doing, what they're going through, how really their life is. And that's how, again, the 80s would be just communication, 70s and the 60s, You would travel by bus, plane, send a letter, phone call, look up in the phone book, even ask the operator, for this person's name, and you would have to have a certain amount of information, first name, middle name, last name, address, state, zip code, and city at that to make sure you really get the right person. And that's how a lot of communication would really be during the time when the phone became a thing. During the 80s, we had chat rooms. You had chat rooms at the time. And the chat rooms that have been available with the programs that were out there with certain computers. You had Gateway. I don't know how many people remember Gateway. You had Comcast. And then a little bit in between, you had Dell. And one way you would know somebody's online if you want to communicate with them, the internet was made public, but this is during the time, even with AOL, which is no longer around, just like Hotmail, who did get brought out and bought out by Microsoft. And you would see if somebody's online because it will show, just like they kind of do up on Facebook, they'd have the green little circle next to their name and avatar, and you would instant message them while they're online, during even inviting them into a chat room. And that's how, you would really communicate through that way, again, to a friend or a family member, but it would really be through a family member who would be in other states. And a lot of it would also be through phone as well. So you couldn't be online if you were on the phone. You had to wait till you got off the phone to go online, to talk to a person. I don't know how many people remember that, but I remember that. And now I'm 28 years old, which I turned, last month on Thanksgiving. But with me, a lot of that communication wouldn't be through phone. A lot of that communication wouldn't be through, internet. And again, that was really the golden era, how communication really evolved, what we got this day. Now, to me, communication would really be just not in school, and I will get to that later on in the subject. A lot of it would be, outside on the block, going over to your partner's house, knocking on their door, and seeing if they're available. And you would get everybody, in the neighborhood. You guys would chill out. You guys would talk, and you guys would also listen to music and raid each other's refrigerator. And that was really how we communicated. And to me, communication, is dead. I want to kind of get back, one way people really used to feel how they used to communicate, especially with their fans, was through music. A lot. You had a lot of the storytellers, 60s, 70s, in the 80s, and even within the 90s and early 2000s from 2005. And that would also kind of teach you and show you in a way, how to communicate. Now today's music does not have that communication. It really doesn't have a sense of people that they can listen to, who they feel like they can communicate with. It doesn't teach them, communication at all. And a lot of it would be through storytelling. A lot of it now is just a message saying, hey, go be depressed, be a suicide hustler, go get on this drug, let's turn up all the goddamn time. I'm sorry, but life can't always be that way. If life was really that enjoyable, then hell, we all would be fucking deer happy and everything would be rainbows and ponies, But sadly, it's not. And, you do need some tragic in your life. Life is a roller coaster. So, one-way communication would be through music. And to me, that communication through music is actually dead. If you ask me, it's not there like it used to be at all. So, going along, with that, especially when you're going through depression, you want to connect to people who can connect to you. I'm not talking about seeing a psychiatrist or a shrink or a therapist to go talk to because they don't really care. They're just there because they can sit down and listen to somebody talk and as they get paid for it. No, you really want someone who who's willing to listen, someone who you can communicate to, someone who you can relate to, someone who's been through the same things. Because a lot that you go through causes a lot of, mental illnesses, not just depression, not just suicide, but a lot of PTSD that makes you, you can get PTSD throughout so many different things. You don't have to be in the army for all that to get that. And that's one thing a lot of people do get messed up. I go through certain PTSDs. I don't like being out in the cold a lot during this time of the season because I've seen a lot of different things growing up and a lot of dangerous times come around this time of the month. And that's why I don't always out for my walks like that. Paranoia. There's a time where I'm always looking over my shoulder. Sometimes I still do. Sometimes I get a bit drumpy at things and bracing myself, no matter what. So because of that, it's always best to have somebody, to relate to that kind of been through that same thing. Someone, who's your twin per se. And you guys really connect and click and you guys can talk to each other about, really anything. And that right there, is really important of communication. And during the time, with all that, from what I just explained, especially during the era of how technology with phones, writing letters, telegraph, computers, still in the early baby stages of the internet when it was available to the public, even going over to your friend's house, was important communication. And it really, helped quite a few things, and sometimes, hey, you may have to square up with somebody, and sometimes it does take physical contact, and physical contact is also a sense of communication, because sometimes the words may not get across, sometimes action sometimes may have to be that option, and during that contact, you're communicating. It may not be in the best way, but in the end, you guys are going to have understanding. If you guys become cool during that process, after it, cool. If not, all right. But at least you guys know you guys communicated in some way, and some words and messages got across in a physical manner that may have not wanted to be the choice, So sometimes physical contact with actions is also a sense of communications. It depends on really how it turns out in the end for both of the parties. And that last real sense of communication, if you ask me, it's no longer out here in the public. And where it's at, from what I've seen with my experience, is really being locked up with either in prison or in jail. Because a lot of those prisoners are going to communicate with each other. A lot of them can connect with each other. A lot of them understand each other. A lot of them can really sit down and talk. And not just also with words, but sometimes there's going to be times where they're going to have to get physical to also get communication across. Even throw it up in terms of spelling out, throwing up certain gang signs, or as people would call it within the system that study, sign language to communicate from one cell block through another. And again, that's communication. And that last bit of communication, especially with music that is being played within those systems, helps a lot of the prisoners. And that last bit of sense of communication is really within the prison and jail systems that I feel like are no really out here anymore. In today's communications, through school, where you see, your friend, you guys talk to each other in person, that's about it. Or texting over the phone, or hanging out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and FaceTime. And other than that, you guys really don't see each other, and that's not really communication. Most of the communication that's via word is, hey, so-and-so is probably fucking so-and-so. Hey, so-and-so said this, let's go get so-and-so. Hey, do you want to get blazed? And that's really it. There's no communication along at all anymore there, because you're not really communicating. Is that what it really came to? And that's how I see it coming, being an older individual, is that communications, I'm just going to see you in school. I don't want to see you outside of school. Hey, well, we can hang out through online apps, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, FaceTiming. Let's talk about bullshit and really don't give a fuck about each other. And to me, that's where communication really went at. And because of, about to be past a decade and 5 years in between, there's going to be generation gaps. And that really started with the last bit of that communication dying out, really started 2009. And that's saying a lot. At least from me. I don't know how anybody else may see it, but I'm giving you my point of view on how I see it and where that communication died at. I see no one really hanging out. I see no one being cool with each other. I just keep seeing and hearing the same shit and stories that I would hear from time to time when I'm out with a lot of younger people, that may be out here and there. And, well, we hung out up on, Xbox and PS4. Or, oh man, I talked to so-and-so up online, that's how we hang out. I just FaceTimed or text so-and-so. Most of the time, you're really by yourself, and that's not communication. And because of that, that attention-seeking is getting worse to where, going back again, a lot of them became, within this generation, with going into this decade, about to be a decade after 10 years so far, became suicide hustlers. Yeah, suicide hustlers. In other words, you're faking it. You're faking it. Or some people may call it even clout chasing. And because of all that, and here's an example, there was a recall. I don't know how many people may know this. They recalled the bigger bags of hot Cheetos, right? Because of a rapper named Little Xanax, who was really white, smoking it, and a lot of kids followed that. You're communicating, but you're giving them a bad communication. Because of fuckheads like this, and how things, over time things change, that communication is dead. And I believe that's what's missing, communication, because if the real communication was still there, you wouldn't have today's generation being suicide hustlers. You wouldn't have them following the dumbasses who fucking promote on these social media platforms, who are getting paid absolutely for not doing anything. And why there's really no real bond there, because everyone's hanging out up on electronic devices, up on social media apps. That's sad. There's very few people left that I can say who really still stick to that old communication ways that I talked about. Most of the time, we're gonna go out and see each other, even if it's for a little while, But again, to me, a lot of that communication is dead. It really is. I don't see a lot of once what was there once we had. To me, it is gone, and because of that, communication is dead. Church used to be communication once upon a time. Messages that were being delivered. And one reason why I also stopped going to church, why I no longer consider myself why I do not consider myself a man of God, is because there's no more communication in church anymore. There's not. And I feel like that's what needs to come back, is real communication. For example, the older audience that gravitate towards me with the music that I do is because there's still communication. I don't do bullshit. And anybody that's been following me for a while or does stumble upon my music here and there, the type of stories that I'm telling along with my music, because it's communicating. It's communication. And with that being said, I do feel like, that's what's being missed, is communication. Today, how things are, that communication just, isn't there. And maybe it's just me, but that's how I see it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And hopefully that you guys may, understand where I'm coming from, what I'm talking about, and that I wasn't too all over the place. And yeah, man, I want everyone to have a good, safe Christmas, happy holidays, and communicate with each other. I want to see how many people, as a matter of fact, I want to challenge whoever may watch this video. I want to challenge whoever may watch this video. For one day, don't go online. For one day, try to stay off your phone, off those apps. Actually go out and communicate with somebody who you like to talk to in person. Film it if you must, too. Say, to really see if that real communication is still there, like actually talk about something. And I want to challenge whoever may watch this video to actually do real communication. And actually dig into some music from the 70s, 80s, and 90s that you feel like you can connect to. That's going to give you a connection, a feeling, a sense of hope, a passion, and somebody who you feel like you can communicate with through that song. I want to challenge you.